Okay, so in this training, we're talking about what I call land investing simplified. A lot of investors are kind of scared from land. It's because you don't understand. But honestly, this is probably some of the easiest pieces of real estate to do something with, because as you will see, you can do different things with it. Um, some of the agenda I want to cover with you today is what exactly is land investing? How to build wealth with land. We're going to talk about finding undervalued land, creative financing options, remote land investing, and common challenges. Now, a lot of this stuff is nothing new or what you're already doing. If you're looking for properties to wholesaling, buy and hold and fix and flip, but it's going to give you maybe a little different perspective to it. So as you go out there looking for leads or deals, for wholesaling, for example, and you're going to come across land, don't be scared of it. Actually, it's very easy to wholesale land as well. Now, what is land investing? Land investing is when you purchase a piece of property that you can do different things with. But we're going to cover here what you can do with land. But this is the oldest form of real estate, right? This is something that's been there forever. And the thing is, land is valuable. It's valuable more than the improvements you put on the land, the building, the construction that can be removed. Land cannot be removed, right? So land investing is, to me, one of the most solid forms of investing. Is this very tied up to location and market and economic trends more than other pieces of real estate where you can, for example, change the use of real estate. But with land, you can rezone land, so it's really tied up to the use, the location, and the economic trends. Now, how you build wealth with land? So first of all, you can flip and wholesale like you do anything else, right? You can quickly buy and reselling for a profit. And I will show you a couple of examples here soon. Long-term holding, you can waiting for urban expansion or other factors to increase value. So sometimes you can get these pieces of land super cheap and then hold on to them and they increase value, right? Subdividing, splitting a larger parcel into smaller, more marketable lots. And I'm going to show you an example of that. And then leasing, renting the land for agricultural, recreation, or commercial purposes. Most of the times when they have buildings on, even hotels or office buildings, they don't own the land, especially if it's really around the metropolitan area, and so that's the thing. Land is looked as separate than the structure. Like, for example, the World Trade Center in New York, right? When 9/11 happened, the building was insured with Lloyd from London, but the land was owned separately, right? So that's the thing, you just have to realize a lot of these commercial buildings are leased on land, and there is a set amount of time. Now, in places like Hawaii, for example, even residential is on leased land, and on the island of Oahu, the land was owned by the Catholic Church. And so what started happening when I was there at the end of the 80s, a lot of those leases were coming up in the 90s. And so you could buy a house for like 200,000-300,000 with an ocean view and everything else, but the land, was leased with the lease coming up in 5 years. So if you didn't buy the land, it's the house could have been demolished if you don't renew the lease. So that's the thing you have to be careful in situations like that. Is like, how long is the lease on the land for, right? And this happens all the time. So leasing land is really a huge business if you have land in strategic locations. Now, finding undervalued land. So this is really an interesting concept when it comes to land, because there are different ways that you still use for our deals, but I'm going to give you a little bit of stories and examples here. For example, tax delinquent property. This is huge, and actually that's how I found most of my land parcels, through tax delinquent properties. So what happens is a lot of people get the land. Either they plan on building later on, or they inherit the land, or they bought the land with the purpose of doing something, but they never do to it. So tax delinquent property is huge when it comes to land. There is actually a gentleman that I've mentioned from time to time. His name is John Lee, Lee, and he wrote a book which is called Secrets of a Dillionaire. You know, I think he trademarked Dillionaire, Dealionaire, Dillionaire. Please buy the book, put it on the shelf. Don't look at it now, okay? If you're still trying to get your business off the ground, all right? Shiny object. But if you are seriously interested, if you are at the point in your life you're looking for a different strategy of land investing, it's a great book, because what it talks about, and I know him personally, what it talks about is how you find lands for tax delinquent property. You know, there are three ways to deal with tax delinquent property. There is pre-auction, there is OTC, which is over the counter, right? And then there is the tax deed auction. So what he likes to do is people that start going in default on land, especially, and he wants to build, he buys only land that is near water, could be a river, a stream, a lake. He's in the Midwest. So, but what he does is he sends a letter to these people, and in the letter, he has a quitclaim deed to say, you don't want your land, just quitclaim it to me. You don't have to worry with it. And you say, yeah, right. It doesn't even pay them anything. No, it doesn't. And his strategy works. Now, the other thing that he does is he made good connections with several county courthouses. And so when they have auctions and nobody wants this land, it goes back to them, and they sell it for just the recording fees. Let me give you a story here. I had a student, this was in St. Louis, Missouri, and she took the strategy and ran with it. And so what she did is there is a location outside of St. Louis, it's called Washington. And she ran across these 10 lots that a developer had taken all this agricultural land, rezoned it, subdivided, did all that, and then didn't do anything with it. So what happened is when it came up for taxes due, nobody bought it because nobody wanted responsibility of all of this. So she ended up getting it for the recording fees only for the whole subdivision for $300. Now they're already subdivided. So what happened is she took each lot and owner financed it out for anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a lot, right? She paid $300 and she got $3,000 for each lot. So land, you can do a lot of this time, because people a lot of time look at land and says, I don't want the land, I don't want to cut the grass. And I will show you here one of my personal stories. There are land specific online platforms, okay? So like, for example, where you have land, you know, platform like LoopNet, for example, is for commercial property, or CityFee is for commercial property. You have a website called LandWatch, which is for land proper, just land. You can also find land on LoopNet. You can also find land, of course, on PropStream. You can find it on Zillow if you filter for land. You know, you can find it a lot of the same platform where you find regular real estate as well. Agents referrals works really well. You know, again, they come across a lot of land, or they know pieces of land that are in residential area and they're just kind of in between houses. You come across these pieces of land all the time. So agents referrals is something that I say, you know, the MLS strategy, right? That works together well. Agents referral works very well for land as well. Outreach, you're driving around, you see pieces of land there that are just sitting there. So that outreach is something definitely. Outreach meaning you call, you text, you do direct marketing. Government auctions, there is same thing as foreclosures, obviously tax delinquent property. There is a lot. Let me tell you one story. So I bought this property in an auction. It was a 2-family building, and I I didn't realize the lot next door went with it. And so I bought the property, and all of a sudden I had 2 parcels. And the city approached me and they say, can we get this parcel from you next door? and we're going to give you 10 years of tax abatement. Basically, instead of paying me money, they took off 10 years, a certain amount from my taxes from a different type of real estate that I own. So I said, sure. They wanted to make a dog park out of it. So, is government auction is a great source to buy land. There is also when the land, especially in the cities, this happens a lot. When the land doesn't get bought by anybody at the auction, it goes to the city. So, for example, in St. Louis, and I have a lot of experience there with this, there is an agency called Land Reutilization Agency. So each city has something different. But when the property goes for taxes auctions and sometimes even for mortgage or loan auctions, they go back to the city. And then the city sends it to this agency in St. Louis. It's called LRA, Land Reutilization. And then they will sell you this land for literally $1. But they obviously want you to build something on it, maybe put a house on it or something like that. I actually bought 4 city blocks in St. Louis for $1. The city put all the infrastructure in there, did the sidewalks, the lights, the back alleys, everything. They just want us to put a new development there, which we built 23 homes. So government auction is really, a grant. And then also government auctions, sometimes they go together with grants. So they will do a lot of grants, like this particular case that I told you about with the city of St. Louis. They gave me $1, but they also gave us grants. They also put all the infrastructure. The only thing we had to do is coming up with a master plan, and also we had to build the spec homes, and then we sold all the developments based on these spec homes. There were 2 spec homes that were put on site, and then we sold everything else based on. There were 3 models, but we sold starting with these 2 spec homes. So these are some of the ways that, and obviously the other ways that you do for the other strategies, right? Like the MLS strategy. You'll find a lot of aging listings for land because, again, people don't think of land, especially if it's random little lots here and there, unless somebody wants to build a house. But then again, they don't look for it. There is a place here now, here where I live nearby. It's called the Ray Beach. And if you drive around there, there is a lot of these little random vacant lots. Well, there are more and more little vacant lots because what happens is a lot of these homes have to go back to the city takes these homes down, and then they take the land and they want the developers to go there. So I start calling up on this land, and they told me, yes, we want the developers to come in and build on these lots. So if you go to Delray Beach, you will see that there are these older homes, and then there are some newer homes there in the middle of older homes. So that's what is taken is shifting. This is kind of like they're taking over slowly the older homes to these new homes. And that's why you see a lot of these little vacant random lots. And the city owns a lot of these lots. They got them through tax sales. They got them through foreclosures. They paid off some of these people that were maybe trashing the property. They took it over. So there's a lot of ways they took over the lot, but now they're trying to clean up the city by inviting developers. Now, this is a couple examples I want to give you. So this one here, actually, I didn't build this house. I own that little house next door. And so I bought the house at an auction next door. And I was doing the work there. And then what happened is there was this huge piece of land next to me. And so I researched who owned this land, and it came up that this land actually had taxes owed on it for about $3,000. And so I found who the owner was. I did my skip tracing. I contacted him. I think I sent a letter at the time. And then, and actually, I think he called me. So that was an easy one. But I contacted him. He says, I have to pay. So I gave him $6,000, which is double what he owed in taxes. He says, I'm tired of this land. I don't remember what he wanted to do with it. He says, I have all these forestry bills. So I had to work with the city in cutting down some of the forestry bill because he owns several $1,000s in that, on cutting the grass and so forth. So I got this land, and then I put it on the MLS. I didn't do anything with it, put it on the MLS and sold it for $60,000. So, being an agent, I never need to pay any commissions because I kind of sold it in-house. And so I profit about 54. For a piece of land that I just happened to be sitting next to a house that I was working on. And then the developer bought it and he built this house that you see right here. Okay. This is something that I've been working on this actually for a while. This is actually in Florida. And this is a special piece of property. Is actually, I think I mentioned it to you guys, is 2 acres of land. It is on the Gulf of Mexico. You see there where it says Airport Road, and also has water in the back with a dock. The dock in the front was this, you kind of see there was a little kind of poles there that got destroyed by a hurricane. But then you have all the dock in the back and you have water in the back. So it has water in the front, in the back. And these 2 acres of, there is a house on there, the one that says 747,000. And needs work, but it's a beautiful 1920s property. But all the land can be subdivided in 4 lots. So I'm working with, is owned by a trust. But again, each lot is worth about 500,000. And I can get the property now, because the property, they sell it as an improved property with a house that it's an older house. I personally hope they're not going to demolish it because it can be redone. It's going to need several $100,000 of work. But you see, it's actually, I'm negotiations with them for about 900,000 for the whole piece. But then each lot is going to be about 500,000, and there are 4 of them. So this is the type of stuff you can do with land. One of the things you can do with land is that you can buy land, like in this example. This land here is less because it's considered actually 2 parcels, the one in the back and the front, but it's considered a residential with a house in it. So they're selling it for the value of the house, but if I take the house away, or if we subdivide it and I have to do that work, yes, it's going to cost me a few $1,000s, but then I can make over $1 million in profit. And so that's the thing. They sell it as a residential with a house in it, but then I'm going to cut it out and sell it as residential buildable lots. So there is a lot more money in doing that. So you can do things like that as well. So creative financing. You can do seller financing. So now, a lot of the lots that I've been getting, they're really not that expensive. So, $10, $20, $50,000, but, seller financing can also be done. Lease with option to buy. You can lease the land with the option to buy. So one example, I actually did this years ago. I leased the land and then I built the property on it. Now I use the land as collateral for me to get a construction loan, built the property on it, and then I refinanced it and cashed out the owner. Okay, so I bought the land at the end, refinanced the property, and then I ended up selling the property. But that's lease with option to buy. Private lenders and partnerships, like when I did my subdivision with the 23 homes, I had this private lender group and these partnerships. So I used their money to build the spec homes. Obviously, $1 wasn't expensive for the land, but I used their money to build the spec homes. And also any marketing, because what we did, we built a home. So before we built even the homes, we actually were doing, we were selling the subdivision. So all the marketing, everything, all the expenses were funded by the private lenders. Land flipping or assignments. Again, you can do the same thing as you do wholesaling, right? You can flip the land, you can assign the land. You can also use your self-directed IRA. Now, keep in mind that when you buy a piece of land, let's say like the property I showed you that I bought for $6,000. If I wanted to do new construction on that and build a house, I could have used the land as my down payment to get my construction loan. So now, because the land was actually worth a lot more than what I paid for it, they're going to take the value of the land. So if you buy for $6,000, like I did, and it valued for $60,000, then they were going to take, okay, if I wanted a construction loan for $200,000, for example, it would have covered it, because the 60,000 that the value of the land, that's more than 20% of the construction loan that I need. So a lot of time you can buy the land if you buy it cheap, but the land is worth more, right? They're gonna take the value of the land, not what you bought it for. And that can be your down payment to build a house, do the construction. That's why a lot of people, they want to build a new house, they buy the land, especially if they can get a great price on it, and then they can put the house on there, right? Because they use the land as their down payment. So they're actually getting much cheaper than if they had to come up with a whole down payment on a new property. That's why a lot of people prefer building their own house besides customizing what they want. So you can also borrow against equity on our properties, right? So if you own our real estate and so forth, you can borrow with the land. My thing is, with land or any other type of investment, you want to have some type of exit strategy in place. What are you going to do with this land? Okay. Don't go into and buy something without knowing what you're going to do with it. That's my suggestion. Okay. Remote investing. Well, because it's land and it's there, think about it, how easy it is to really sell it at the end of the day, right? You don't have to worry about putting a lockbox or having your boots on the ground to meet prospective buyers. You don't have to worry about the owner being there waiting for somebody to show up, and maybe you can bypass all of that because it's a piece of land. So you can tell somebody, okay, go there, take a look at it if you want it, just call me back, right? So it's so much easier to do remote investing with land, okay? So it's a different concept, obviously, than having to deal with a house. Now, common challenges. Zoning, that's the biggest one. You need to make sure what are the restrictions on zoning. Also, if you are going to build on it, what is the requirements? Like maybe, they want 50 feet frontage, and 120 feet deep. So if you have a lot, how many lots can you do like that, right? So you have to make sure what the requirements are. So the zoning restriction is the biggest thing that I encounter when I have to deal with land. Like with that piece I showed you, the property, I have to put a driveway that kind of goes along the sides of the property so they can access all the lots, and then the zoning has to be changed. Market risk. Land values depend heavily on location and market demand. It's more fluctuating from because real estate, you can, if it's an existing piece of property, and you see this a lot of time, you go down the street and you see these houses, but they're actually being rezoned commercial, right? It used to be a house and now it's a dentist office. Or it used to be an office building and now they're lofts, right? So they can adapt existing real estate. Now, with land, is their request, is the expansion moving towards the area? Is something going on there, right? How is things happening? So that's why land is tied more to what is going on in the area. Financing, securing loans for undeveloped land can be more challenging than for developed properties. The things that will work the most is that if you go there and already have your plans or a master plan of what you want to do, then they're going to look at everything, right? They're looking at the construction and they're looking at the land, right? So that's the thing, is financing will have to be incorporated. But if you go out there and just want to buy a piece of land and you want to get a loan for holding on to the land, they don't usually, a lot of lenders don't like that. They want you to know, okay, what are you going to do with this land? Because it's not going to create income. You're not going to live on it. And so what you're going to do with it and pay this loan every month, right? So that's why you have to really know what you're going to do with the land before you get into it. And time to profit. Land investments often take longer to yield returns compared to other real estate types. But if you do buy in the right area, obviously it's going to be, very crucial. Now, I personally have not held land for a long time waiting for the market to do. Either I've developed it or I've sold the lots pretty quickly. But just to give you some example here, my own dad, actually, he in Italy, he owned, his family owned all this agricultural land. But the city was kind of expanding towards that, so it rezoned all this land, and basically they built a city on top of this land. So they built houses, hotels, and everything. So he made a ton of money, but he also died at the age of 44 from stress. But that's another story. But the thing is, it rezoned all the agriculture into residential and commercial. Okay. Some other people I know here in Florida that bought land in areas like Pompano Beach. I know a lady, actually, I just talked to her recently. She has this land now for 50, 60 years, and she got it for nothing, basically, pennies. And I was like, how much your land is worth right now, right? She said, yeah, I know. And she's 70 years old. And she's like, yeah, I know, we're thinking about what to do with it, if we want to build or if we want to sell it. Then somebody else I know, he owns a house in Davie, and he bought this piece of land back in the 90s, this lot, for $1,000. And now I don't even know how much that land is worth. He put a nice big house on it, but we were talking about, I said, did you have your land evaluated? It's probably close to $1 million. But the thing is a big piece of land. But the thing is this, not a lot of people hold on to land just waiting for things to change, right? But if you do, and sometimes you can buy this land super cheap, definitely there is profit in land, especially if the city or developments are expanding into that area. So these are some of the challenges, but it's nothing that cannot be overcome. But the biggest thing is, zoning restriction, market risk. Those are the two big ones in me that when you invest in land.